Welcome to What Not to Do. I'm Kyle Schmidt, and this is episode 46. I've got the evolutionary entrepreneur himself, Mark Burwell. He's not only evolutionary, he is a serial entrepreneur. After massive success with his own company, he's gone on to help over 3,000 companies get rolling. He's an author, speaker, and he's taking his victory lap, baby. You're going to love it. Hold tight. One of my biggest aims in life is to give you more in use value than I take in cash value. And I'm so thankful for all the thoughts and ideas you've shared with me on how I can better do that. One of those ideas that has come up on a few different occasions has been, we love the long form conversational format, but sometimes it takes a while just to get through even one episode. What would it look like to aim for episodes that are 1 hour or less in length without compromising the format? And I thought, great idea. I love the long conversational format too, and I really want those conversations to be as accessible and easy to digest as possible. So I'm absolutely pumped to introduce a new innovation of what not to do. We'll keep the long form conversational format that has been so well received, and we'll divide it into 30 to 45 minute segments that'll make it more easy to digest on your morning commute or working out at the gym or run or hanging out at the house. This is going to be awesome. I'm so pumped to keep giving you such high value conversations, and now more accessible and easier to digest than ever. I'm so proud to be your guys' host and so thankful for all your help innovating and iterating to make this community even better. I love you guys. And with that, let's get to what not to do. All right. So I am at Copper State Brewing Company, one of my favorite places in town, and I am sitting here with my new friend, Mark Burwell. He is the evolutionary entrepreneur. And when I say that, I mean he has not only started his own multiple businesses and been involved in that work, but I think the ticker's up to over 3,500 businesses that you've actually helped to start and have a hand in and shaping. Your fingerprints are on, which is amazing. And you're not just talking, from afar. You're talking, been involved with, which is phenomenal. So anyway, I'm so excited to be here. I'm thankful to Andrew Schmitz for the connection, and here we are.
Thanks for inviting me, Kyle.
Yeah, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking. I go to a coffee shop. I like to go and ask what their coffee of the day is, and usually medium or dark roast. And it gives me a little bit of flavor. It's like looking at a guy to see what his tie is or what he's wearing. It tells you a little bit about the place. So
yeah, that's awesome.
That's how good their beans are.
Yeah. I don't drink coffee for the caffeine, for the pick-me-up. I like the flavor myself, and so. So I usually, the stronger the better, if it can float a pistol, is the kind of my thing. And so I'm running with an Americano with an extra shot. So it's, shots of espresso and hot water, which makes for a stronger cup of coffee, which I'm
You're supposed to be doing that on Mondays, not Fridays.
Every day's a Monday, Mark. Every day's a Monday. Well, this is awesome. So you gifted me a copy of your book, which is, a huge blessing. Thank you so much. I'm excited. Came highly recommended. Andrew recommended it in his episode, which is so cool. But it's not the only book you've written, right? I think there's multiple under your belt here too. So I'm excited. It's been fun. We've been chatting off air a little bit here. And aside from who you'll share this with in your network, there's probably a lot of folks out there who actually have never heard of you before, who have no idea who you are. And you've got a really cool story. So do you mind tell us a little bit who Mark is? Where do you come from? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What do you love to do when you're not, changing the world through starting businesses or passing down the entrepreneurial baton? Yeah, who's Mark Burwell?
When you mention all those businesses, it kind of gives you an age, and I won't say that, but...
47.
67 graduate of Madison West. So I did grow up in Madison.
Cool.
And was a freshman there, and of course... as a freshman, that was right around the time that I served in the Army for a couple of years as a tenure there, and then came back instead of, it was kind of unsettled in the Madison area, as we all know. So I did go to UW Stout, and I think by going to a state school, and it gave me a chance to still do my running. It's an All-American runner, and I think that probably brought to me some leadership qualities, and started in architecture, but also got changed that and about face into business. Got involved with some small business arenas, and so my graduation degree was in business administration. So from there, took a job with a corporate job with H.C. Prange's, which was a company that was growing. It was truly entrepreneurial at the time, which kind of brought me back, I guess, into Green Bay, is where their roots were from. But after 7 years, realized the corporate business wasn't there. It was more do your thing, and kind of got recruited from a business back in the Madison area to grow some of their businesses. And then from there, got tapped on the shoulder with a one-store operation to do some consulting just for them, just as a sidelight at Putzer's. And wow, that changed my whole dimension on entrepreneurship. And for the next 12 years, I put up a store from Minneapolis to Milwaukee to statewide stores. And then when the retail business in the 90s started to go down a little bit, we actually doubled our business by getting into the catalog business. And then as you reinvent yourself, the internet business, which doubled again. So you go from 4 or 5 employees into, well, it was probably 88, 90 employees and multi-million-dollar business, which was satisfying. And then you get to be into transitioning in your career, and your boys are out of college, don't want to be in that specific business, and so you get tapped on the shoulder to come back to, which I was pretty much set up and built corporate offices in a distribution center for Putzer's, really from the help of my Prange days. So I would say one of the learning lessons I had was the growth and helping as an operations executive with Prange's to kind of do the same thing with a small micro business and growing it into a major business. So it was an excellent opportunity for me to take some of those takeaways from my corporate days and building a corporate small business, we'll say.
Yeah. Is Prange's the same as Prangeway?
Well, Prangeway was later on their discount division, but it was the big store you saw downtown.
Yeah.
Prange's actually started 1 year prior to Sears.
Okay. Wow.
1889 or 87, I think, and Sears started a year after that. But a huge department store division.
Yeah.
And I happened to come on board when there was an opportunity for their growth and help open up about 11 of their operations, from Traverse City to Marshfield to Fond du Lac, Madison, 2 Madison stores. So it was a great opportunity in the operations end, which you do need later on, obviously, and that's what I think brought me into the element of what to do and how to build a business. Even the distribution center that was built in Oshkosh for Putzer's, for their catalog and internet and retail stores, was the exact same blueprint as that Prange's was for their regional distribution center in Madison. Mm-hmm. So it was a great opportunity. And then, of course, being tapped on the shoulder to come back to Green Bay from Reggie White, Paul Jaden, and some of the city fathers in Green Bay here, being involved with the chamber way back, I thought, wow, this opportunity maybe for me to get back to Green Bay. This is where my kids grew up. So I did. I came back, was just going to help out as a volunteer for a couple of years, and then the plan, the vision that I think Reggie had as building, we both had the same paradigm. It was envisioning building communities of entrepreneurs and their community for empowerment, and being involved with the chamber, with NWTC, with some of the small business adjunct classes that I had, gave me an opportunity to really bring something to light, to put all those connections together. And now that was something I thought I could help them with part-time to get it going for them. And here I am 18 years later, the last 8 years as being still the director, but as a volunteer, full-time volunteer, so I'll never retire.
Yeah, and nor should you. I mean, I think your experience and the wisdom that you gain would just be incredibly invaluable. And you mentioned before just passing that baton, right? Really equipping the next generation of entrepreneurs and leaders in that respect to go do well, right? In a sense, maybe to go further, faster, to do greater and bigger things. And like I was sharing with you earlier, that gets at the heart of this podcast, right? Like let's get that conversation going again. Sometimes in life we can have such a small mindset, such a scarcity mindset, and it's like, hey, what can we contribute in our lifetime for ourselves, rather than thinking, the life work that we're doing, the legacy that we're constructing today, how valuable will that be to generations, long after I'm gone, 7 generations, 10 generations from now. And I think thinking in that kind of infinite way is really powerful.
Well, the ecosystem is so dynamic now, and we need to reinvent ourselves. We need to constantly, and I applaud you because podcasts are part of that.
Yeah.
It's not all about what we learn in an accredited class or even in the classroom itself. Mm-hmm. And how do we do that? I know 1 Million Cups program that I brought into Appleton and Green Bay as a way for that. It's not about pitching and networking. It's actually pulling the ecosystem or the community together, and passing the baton is basically just, instead of working with individual businesses, it's working with some of the leaders and some of the people you feel are going to make a difference. It's the influencers. And I know that Andrew Schmidt, who you had on earlier, he actually is a young up-and-coming person, and how did he get some of his influence? Podcasts. So I just thought, well, this is evolving.
Why? Why do I do what I do? Let me tell you. My why is to use my presence and my prose to inspire you to go all in on you so that you live a legacy worth leaving. Yeah, it's amazing how technology, in a sense, is the great equalizer. It's really decentralized things, and even to create, entrepreneurial opportunities, right? Actually, one of the things that pushed me over the edge, I don't know if I've actually shared this on an episode before. One of the things that pushed me over the edge to do a podcast was hearing the story of this high school student, right, here in town. Actually, I'd love to get him on the show. His name's Nate. I got to track him down. But he started a podcast on the history of Vikings, not the football team, just, Vikings, And it took off, but it was just something he loved, and very niche, right? And he dropped out of his local high school and homeschooled himself so he could work more on this. This is a high school kid, right? So he could do more of his podcast. He was then interviewing folks from Oxford University. He eventually got a fellowship from a higher ed institution, and 19 years old. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, here's a teenager, right? That basically had a concept, did something he loved. He tied it to a problem, right? And found there was actually demand in the market for that type of thing, and was able to maneuver and build in a relatively agile way, and to be able to create something that the world wanted and loved, right? Or at least a niche in the world. And things like that, it's amazing, and how low overhead it is to even do what we're doing. We're sitting here with one microphone, it's picking up our voices onto an iPad, and then the world's going to get it. And that's just amazing to me. And when you think of a lot of the greatest companies and brands, oftentimes how they built their businesses was through TV and radio. And now that TV and radio is in your pocket, right? And so for maybe one of the first times in the history of the world, you can have a global reach and yet have that personal relationship with the customer, because you can be direct to them. It's really, really powerful, and it's just kind of beginning. And I think even from a market segment with podcasting, it's not necessarily new. It started in 2004, but it's still in that early adopter, early majority phase. And it's crazy. Blogs are saturated, and over 500 million some blogs. You've got YouTube channels that are several million, less than 1 million podcasts. It's really, really interesting the way that information can take it. And then there's a podcast for everyone out there. It's crazy. And even if you weren't going to try to build a business with it, or that around it, powerful tool just for awareness. It's a stage, So That's my little rant on podcast. If you're listening, go start a podcast.
I think the biggest thing that there's this fear. I know I was involved with a workshop yesterday that Amy Peach and I had put on for over 50. And I've been realizing this for several years, that there is a transition period. The baby boomers are not comfortable with technology, and they talk technology, and they talk about social media and how that, and I say, well, the number one thing that comes up that people want to start a business are the ones who are retired or kind of falling through the cracks where they can't, they're overqualified. It's a big dilemma in the Valley here. There's people who are in their mid-50s and they still got to reach to 65 and even beyond, I feel, and they're afraid of technology. Well, the thing is, the number one question they have is how marketing's changed. And I say, wait a minute here now. Marketing is technology is marketing, but it has the shelf life of fruit. So you have to be, and that's what's exciting about entrepreneurship, is that you can hop in on that, but if you fall behind, sometimes it's hard, but you to pick what you're comfortable with and do it. And a lot of them would think that podcasts is technology, and that I don't do tech stuff, but it's refreshing. So when you show them that, they not only take it on their information zone, they now put it into their marketing.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, if they don't know how to use an iPhone or a microphone, totally cool. Hire your grandson to do it. Pay your grandson $10 or whatever to press play for you, and start to teach him a few entrepreneurial concepts. But then even from there, think about it. Like the folks that you're saying, like just like you're doing, right? You have a lifetime of wisdom that you're passing down, and that just takes your head and your heart, right? And then ultimately your mouth, right? And when you think about folks that have had a career, they're 50, 55, 60 plus, think about how much experience in life that they've, just wisdom that they've gained, hopefully by that point, right? And sometimes they might say, well, I don't know what I would tell someone to do. Hey, great, tell them what not to do, right? And that's the whole point of this podcast, right? Is everyone has something that they could share, right? Even if it's something what not to do, right? And pass that down. Help out the next generation that's coming up, that's going to be leading and starting businesses, et cetera, or even for their own family members. I think, a podcast could be really neat. A great way to record your legacy. Right? What are some of those messages you want to pass on to your family?
Well, I think the biggest thing I see from a lot of the entrepreneurs, a lot of them that are at the Million Cups programs, and I feel it's not just about wisdom or your time or energy or even money to help them out. The biggest factor, I think, is connections.
Yeah.
A lot of them really don't know how to flow through to build an enterprise team and who those people would be beneficial with. They feel that they need to put them on as advisors or boards. No, it's just having access to people. And sometimes that can be by listening. Sometimes it can be through a podcast, let's say, now that we're on that topic. But there are elements that but being a connector for them is probably the most valuable tool. It's not just the wisdom, because they can collect that.
Yeah.
That's kind of easy. The hands-on things, what to learn, yes.
Yeah, and to your point, wisdom is like compounding interest. You just don't get it overnight. And while someone could pass it down to you, there's still a qualitative difference in how we really understand it and what we do with it. And like you said, that really comes through living and actually doing. And so, and I love that idea of connecting too. And that's been part of my experience. I've gotten to sit down with just awesome folks that I didn't know a month ago. That I didn't know, 2.5 weeks ago when I first launched the podcast.
So there's a method to your madness.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, that's exactly it. And like I told you before, this is Kyle style. Like, if there's any method of the madness, I love doing this. It's what I'm good at. It's what I enjoy. And there's economic opportunities. It's just awesome.
Do what you do what you love, right?
Yeah. And so it's like, I think, all learning is vain unless we learn for the sake of others. And so that's like, in life we learn and hopefully we do something with it where we apply that knowledge. But the greatest way we can apply that knowledge is also by helping others to
to take what we've had to reproduce that in others. And I get to do that. I get to broker this conversation that we're going to have today. And I'm selfish because I'm learning a lot for myself from you, which is awesome. But then I get to broker that conversation and give it away to 7 billion people. And that's amazing to me. And I love that. It's, that's the method. That's the method of the madness. It's Kyle style. Well, cool. Okay, so tell us a little bit tactically about what exactly that you're doing today, right? So you mentioned that you're retired, but you're not, right? You're in a different.
Never retired.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. That makes two of us. And so it's really in this season of life. What does your work look like now? Because it looked different than when you're helping, putzers and et cetera along the way, right? And building out. What does an average day?
Well, I like to relate everything, and I guess that's what I like to do is draw analogies now. But when people say, "What are you doing now?" Of course, that's a typical question. Or, "Are you retired? You should be." And I say, "Well, what I like to say is it's taking a victory lap." And it's easier for me, I guess, because I was a sprinter, a runner, so it's a victory lap. But what does a victory lap mean? Does it mean what you've done on your successes and that? No, not necessarily. It can mean taking my grandkids, doing something. It can be enjoying a travel. Those are things you realize, but it's the flexibility to do that.
Yep.
So, but at the same time, still working and building and giving back to the communities.
I love it. I love what you said, taking a victory lap. That's awesome. And everything about that imagery too, that metaphor, like this is a victory lap. It's not a loser lap, right?
Right.
And to celebrate that, to celebrate a life well lived, and that's encouraging for me. A guy who's younger than yourself, to say, do I have that in mind? Do I have that victory in mind, that end in mind? And living life, with our victory lap in mind, which is a cool way to think about it. So.
And there's a lot of people, like I was saying yesterday, that are 55 to 65, and I had brought that analogy up, and they said, well, we kind of are confused on this because what happens if we have never had the victory lap? And I said, well, I like to relate it to my boys. They were runners as well. When we would sit down, it's not how they did or what it was that if they don't start the race or if they don't go out and practice, somebody else did. So if you are caught in this transition, should I retire, not retire, whatever, do something. At least start practicing, doing something, because not doing it is more of a risk than anything. So.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking about that a bit earlier. I think it might have been off air. But exactly what you said. Sometimes people are so afraid in life to take a risk, or they'll say, "Oh, that's too risky. I can never do that." Or when they think of something like starting a business or any kind of entrepreneurial endeavor, "Oh, that's not how I'm wired. I can never do that. It's too risky." And exactly what you said. I think that could lead to one of the biggest failures in life, is failing to see that not doing anything is the riskiest position of all. It's the riskiest decision of all.
It works that way with change. I know when I was. People would say, "Oh, what is Burwell up to now?" And it's some change thing. So it's kind of that you have to sometimes prepare, be prudent, but you still have to go forward with things. It's just how you're doing and how much at a time.
Yeah, and that came out in your story earlier as you're kind of sketching out the timeline where, as retail went down, and the shifts and the changes that you made in your business in the 90s, and then with technology coming in, and you didn't run from those things, you embraced them and helped to evolve, right? Which is really, really cool. Not every company did that.
How do I do what I do? Well, for me, there's one overarching ultimate principle: to give you more in use value than I take in cash value. It'd be like if I wrote a book and you bought that book for $10, but that book gave you a $1 million idea. I have effectively given you more in use value than have taken from you in cash value. And that's exactly what I aim to do with what not to do.
Well, the actual last element of that is that we got involved with jobbing.
Okay.
And jobbing meant working with 300 other specialty businesses, and that was the disruptive thing we did in the industry, is we took fashion and I would go to Montreal or New York, and we'd build fashion around specialty sizes, which they didn't because the cuttings weren't there and that. But today's world, that would be harder to do because we're doing things overseas. When it was here in America, when you were working with that, it was easy because your cuttings were smaller, but you could do that by having a bigger pencil. So we would sometimes even warehouse things for other stores, but have that available at a better cost for our customers.
Wow. Yeah, just fascinating.
So supply size management, I think I learned way back when I first started with Prangies in traffic management. So logistics wasn't called logistics then, but it was still distribution channels.
Yeah. You got it. You have a product that you got to package and got to deliver to someone, right? Yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah, I love hearing the history of it. It's fun for me. Okay, so you're in this role in life of taking a victory lap, right? And I love the running metaphor there, and the other one that you used earlier in passing down the baton, mentoring, teaching, coaching, helping other folks. Can you talk a little bit about the eHub and what it is and what you guys are doing and what you have been up to in that regard?
Well, I think we've evolved into, mainly because instead of having a staff, we have several volunteers in that, but we have a lot of disciples, I should say, that are out doing things. And one of the things I mentioned I wanted to build was not necessarily build, but put together is the woman aspect of women empowerment, and we had done that. 66% of our businesses over the years, the 920 some business startups we had in this area, and in Ohio and even in Janesville, Beloit, was where there was a need. We weren't out there trying to set up anything. It was where their needs were. And we saw how building Main Street programs, and we saw that with what was happening with a lot of the businesses that were started in the Broadway district here, and what happened in 7 communities throughout Ohio, and what was happening with Janesville and Beloit when the auto industry was struggling. So out of that, creatives and women were 2 things that I thought and my retirement wasn't really retirement, it was seeking, when my wife had terminal cancer and passed away, I kind of was involved as a caregiver. And because of that, I took a step back on helping more remotely and in different ways. But the woman empowerment was so important that we've had a couple of our, we'll say, past alumni have done that. Sherry and I have created a book called The Creative Entrepreneur. And that has stemmed a real resurgence, and we've done that not just in Green Bay, but taken that even on an international level with some of the needs that entrepreneurs sometimes, and creatives, especially artisans, that includes everything from some of our chefs to photographers, to video photographers, tons of different people that are in the classroom is not as a classroom, but now we do more hands-on business modeling, business canvassing. And obviously, a lot of the workshops that we do deals not with a lot of blah, blah, blah curriculum or building a business plan. It's more the hands-on, and it's been very refreshing to see the creativeness that's happened in the last 3 years from that, just from Green Bay. So having to continue doing that, no, that's passing the baton again.
Yeah.
And we feel that there's probably about 8 to 10 true leaders within the Green Bay community who are taking that message on. So that's kind of what my message is as an author and as a speaker, but more not running a program as much as it is working with them, because you can only work with so many individuals. So it's more or less working with leaders as much as it is with individuals.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. If you were a mile wide and an inch deep, the impact isn't that, in a sense, that great. And so you can have a breadth of reach, through books and speaking, but then really the qualitative work is that inch wide and a mile deep, and finding a handful of folks that you can really impact, pass the baton to, and then they're going to go and do the same, and it can multiply exponentially that way, which is exciting. So, yeah, love it. I love that concept of like a disciple, people that you're impacting, And I'm sure that's got to be rewarding for you. I mean, to look back and to see how many folks have, that you've had the joy and pleasure of working with, maybe have come to the eHub, or you've been able to help with their businesses, and that they're thriving today. And I know you were saying a little bit earlier off air that some folks, hey, had said, Mark, hey, I had to choose for myself and make the choice for myself, and had I never done that, I would have probably failed in life. And there's got to be a joy there to see, in a sense, your proverbial children, your business children, to go further and farther and grow up and mature in their businesses and that kind of thing.
Well, more than anything is the whole passion, like I said before, and that really comes a lot from Sarah White, who said to give back is to every person needs to give back. So we have a tremendous amount of leaders. I think 11 out of the last 13 years we've had nominees who have been either Small Business Person of the Year for the Chamber or Entrepreneur of the Year as nominees and award winners. So, but they're the mentors. They're the ones who are passing. So we like to think of the program as not about entrepreneurship. It's really about creating leaders for the communities. That's where the empowerment, that's where Reggie's vision truly was. And even the other communities that I've been involved with, it's train the trainer. It wasn't running programs in those communities. It's showing them that same mission, not to be competitive, but to work together as a community, build the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, it gets into that scarcity versus abundance mindset where if people aren't maybe familiar with that, or that competition versus creation, it's easy in the business world to get sucked into a very competitive mindset and thinking that everyone's out to get you or steal your ideas, or you're constantly competing against every other business, all that kind of stuff, rather than be focused on how you can create and collaborate, right? It's interesting, I mentioned Simon Sinek earlier. He wrote the book Start With Why. He wrote another book called The Infinite Game, which riffs on, I think, an earlier concept of a book called The Infinite Mindset. But he tells a story about he was speaking at Microsoft, a conference in Microsoft. The entire conference was all about how they're going to beat Apple. They're going to beat Apple. They're going to beat Apple, right? And he goes and speaks at Apple. And the entire conference was how Apple is going to help teachers better help students. Didn't mention competition once. And I thought that was a really potent story or picture of how we should be focused when we're building a business. It doesn't mean that there aren't things to consider as far as competition, all that kind of stuff. But if that's our number one focus, we're actually not helping to actually create and solve the problems that we want in the world and help the people that we actually really want to help. Having that abundance mindset and how we get there, I think, can be really, really powerful. And then even like you said, when you bring it on a micro level within a given community, entrepreneurs don't have to compete against other entrepreneurs. Well, how can we all work together and create this ecosystem, this fabric that actually can support something, which is, and how we can achieve the goal together versus constantly, being at odds with one another, which is not going to help anybody in the long run. So,
well, that's one of the looking at, we'll say way back in Praise, now that's in the 70s. I feel one of their biggest failures was exactly what you're talking about. Is I left probably 5 years before that, but when they decided to take on competition with Shopko. And whereas before they weren't thought of as a commodity discount store, they were thought of as an innovator and one of the leader in the department store, fashion industry, all the stuff they did, from Bruce the Spruce to things that were community oriented in every town they were in. They got away from that to compete, and doesn't work.
Yeah, it draws you away from what the original vision was, and
exactly.
And that's a parable for every company, but even for all the way down to a particular individual. Like when we have our particular goal in life, or what we think our purpose or calling is, that overarching life work that we're giving ourselves to, it's sometimes easy with all the good things that come our way to be distracted from the best things, and we start to lose sight of why we set out in the first place and get pulled into the weeds here or there or the other thing, And so, actually, with saying that, I'm curious for you, why this? Like, why are you giving your life to this kind of work, especially like in this season of life? Like, you could just be done. You could be, feet up on a beach somewhere or whatever, like Greenville, Wisconsin, where, it's not too bad today, but, it's for 9 months out of the year, it's snow, or whatever it is. And so why be here? Why Why help the next generation? Why pass the baton?
There's that's a lot of questions wrapped up. I think that getting into entrepreneurship, a lot of people say you don't get to have a life balance and things, and I say no, it's just the opposite. You do have a life balance. I loved, and every time I would have maybe a high school student come in for looking at businesses, whatever I've done, I show them how important it is to have that. If my boys are running races, I never missed a one, because I could go to that track meet, I could go to the cross-country meet, I could take a vacation. Matter of fact, the employees, the staffs would always say they'd get gift certificates. The wife and I had to make sure we did get away, because they wanted to make sure that when we'd have our company party, they'd always wonder how your health was and everything. It's important to let them know that. It's important to have that life balance and that's one thing that's really, really important. So with that being said right now, I call it cultural immersions. You don't have to necessarily call them vacations. Had opportunities a few months ago to be in San Miguel de Ante, which is a takeaway for me, but also a way. I spoke at the International Writers Conference, got involved with the Rotary, and also taught some classes at one of the universities, or I shouldn't say classes, but some workshops. So what do? You take your cultural immersion, but you still keep what you want to do, and they love that.
Yeah.
And so Sherry and I had an opportunity with one of our books, The Creative Tribe, we were in Nashville. Well, are you on vacation? You're on vacation, but you do what you love, so you have that opportunity to do a book signing. Yeah. So I'm just saying, you those are the things that you can continue to do, and that's probably what was happening. When I would have a conference, I would bring managers along. Did I get a chance to go golfing? Did I get a chance to? No. But at the same time, it was enjoyable for me to have that. I guess it's picking your lifestyle. It's still working hard, but still enjoying. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't do that. They're I think, get a little insecure sometimes with things. And so even the part of life that they're in, there's a lot of young couples who have kids and they think that they're going to have all this free time, and the end of the school year comes, let's go on vacation, and they turn around and because of the type of business they're in, they can't. So I question that when they're getting into that business. So those are things too, positive and negatives on the entrepreneurial, and that's what I have to right now is, do you take a vacation? Do you take more time for yourself? Let's say, do you love to golf? Well, to me, maybe when I start hobbling around at 80, maybe I will start taking up golf. Otherwise, I'm going to do some of the zip lining things and whatever.
You're still running that victory lap. You can't stop you.
You know the why, and you know the how. So what? What is it that we're going after? Well, our big, hairy, audacious goal is to inspire 1 billion people to live a legacy worth leaving by 2030. That's 100 million people per year for the next 10 years. And my friend, it starts with you. This podcast is for you, it's about you, and I couldn't do it without you.
I love it, yeah. So, that's good. I love what you said about designing your lifestyle, right? It seems like a lot of us, we're basically kind of taught or programmed to, maybe even directly, we go to school for 18 years, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, live for the weekends, right? We go to college Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, live for the weekends. And we get a job Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, live for the weekends. And most people, it seems like we're taught to design our life around our work, right? And what you're saying is the options that we have as an entrepreneur, or being an entrepreneur gives us more options, and one of the options is to design our work around our life. And sometimes the idea, there's a lot of different ways people talk about that work-life balance. But the blessing of entrepreneurship is you have the options, you get to choose. And in one sense, you're always working, in another sense, you get to choose when you work, and that's those seem contradictory, but in a sense they're not. I thought the way that you described it was really good. It's like you never missed one of your boys' tracks meet. You could always choose to be there. You had the option and the flexibility. If something for some reason went wrong, at work, like, and you owned it, like it rolls up to you in a sense, So it's like in that sense, you're always working, but you're not always working. And there's that. I guess I don't know exactly how to say it, but.
Well, people tend to kind of think well, you're supposed to delegate.
Yeah.
And I never really took that as probably a tip of bad advice, and that is not to delegate, but I like to work with people to mentor them.
Yeah.
In other words, our company, there is no bosses. I remember I'd be in a Milwaukee store, this is our boss over here. I'm not their boss.
Yeah.
I wanted people to be mentored. In other words, whether it was myself or somebody I would have that I felt was important. Did they have a higher title than the next one? No. They just worked together. So everybody felt it was their businesses. Every location, it was their businesses. And when people came in, the face that's who owned the business. So people thought they owned the business. That's what you want. So yeah, when you're away, it's the empowerment's there. And that's truly what I felt was important to teaching entrepreneurs is when they're scaling your business, you need to empower all those people, not build an insecurity where, oh, heaven forbid, I don't want this person to know a lot about this. I made sure I trained. I brought vendors in to show them how important materials were and fabrics were and customer service was. Those are all important things. But I got criticized from a lot of times because people would say, well, they may leave you. And I say, that's even better. That's even better. That's what the purpose of life is to do that. But did they have to leave? No. But if you knew that you create the demand, you want to be here. There are no commissions, there are no revenue streams. You build your own business and the profit you're going to share with that. Everybody, we share with everybody. So there's not the selfishness about who gets the inventory and who does this and who does that. You're working together to build that.
Man, I love that, and that's so powerful. It's kind of funny. It's like because you're talking about the dynamics of that idea of discipleship or that mentoring, that empowering, the reproducing what you've learned in others, right? Which makes a stronger company, a better company. In a sense, it gives you more and more freedom to step away because you have so much trust in the folks that you're working with, right? And that are at the store or whatever it might be. But switch the context. We with our own kids, we are parenting them, teaching them, letting them fail so they can get stronger and wiser. And we do this in a way that one day we want them to be productive members of society and doing maybe greater things than what we could, and we want to help to set them up for success. It's like kind of someone comes along and be like, well, don't you know they might leave you someday? It's like, that's the point. Like, right. I don't want them living in my basement the rest of my life, And I think there's that similar dynamic to the folks that we work with and that we lead. Is no, we want them to go. We want them to become and really reach their full capacity and potential. And if that means that I have a hand in here to be able to so impact them and teach them what I know and pass on that knowledge, and then they say, hey, I've got this great idea, I'm going to go over here, thanks, Mark. It's like you celebrate that. Like, run another victory lap, right? Because that's the point.
That's a great point, Colin. I used to tell the story in classes, too, is that Reggie and Sarah White, they would call up and say, now, your sons grew up pretty good. Tell us, I heard from one of your talks that you're not supposed to mentor your kids. And I said, no, Reggie and Sarah, it's not that. I said, you mentor your kids till they get to be about 11, 12, maybe 13. But I said, what happens when they get that way? And that's what their kids, or Jocoli, who just recently got married a couple weeks ago. One of the things that you have to realize that they know it all. So at 13, you stop mentoring your kids. For heaven's sake, let the teachers, let the coaches, let them do the mentoring. So what do you do from that point on? Well, you become a role model. And that's the problem with society in general, not just in business. And I created that with the business too. You cut the cord with that, and you become a role model even as a CEO, president of the company. you do the same thing with your kids. And my kids step back. Probably the most of my volunteerism, whether it meant being on United Way boards and charity boards, chamber boards, it was during that period of time. Kids don't need you around as much, but they are looking to see what you do. And the nice thing about that, that's what's happening now when I look at my kids, or my two sons, is they are taking those leadership roles. They are becoming not just role models for their kids who are growing up, but also in the community, and that's refreshing to see. But they have to see that. So Reggie and Sarah, you are definitely the role models. So don't try to mentor them.
Yeah, I love that. There's some parenting advice. We have 3 little kiddos at home, 3, 2, and 1 year old, and my wife is due any day now with our 4th. And so some of the parenting advice that was given to us was, parenting is really a process of letting go. Like all the way from the point of like when you're actually holding the child, they can't walk. Well, now you gotta let go because they're crawling and walking, and you want to hold onto the bike and not let them fall off, but you gotta at some point let go. And I love that because it's exactly what you're saying. There comes a point where even like in how you're mentoring and teaching them, there's a process of letting go, and you have to let them go, and they're gonna have to make choices and fail. And the point is, you want to have taken the right time to be able to mentor and teach them, but then they got to go do. And that can be scary for a parent. We don't want them to fail. We want to try to hedge those, mistakes, and we don't want to let go. But I love that you said like that transition point, even as young as 12 or 13. It's let them go. They have to exercise everything you've taught them now. If they don't, they'll never learn. They won't grow into full maturity.
But the baby boom generation grew up, Kyle, with do as I say, not as I do. Right. And it's exactly the other way around.
Yeah, and exactly your point. I mean, it's not even that the mentoring, quote unquote, stops necessarily when they hit 13. It changes, right? It's like they've been learning by imitation the whole time, but now it's less words, and now they're watching because they're going to go do, and then they're going to be processing everything that they've learned from you from that point, and still watching you, right? And that's really cool to see that. In your own sons, and I'm sure that makes you really, really proud to see that, which is cool. And again, then there's that similar dynamic when it comes to business and the folks that we have the joy and privilege of leading, just like we did our children. We want those same things for the folks that we lead in our respective capacities, whatever sphere of life it's in, and that's really, really exciting. I think that's one of the greatest rewards is to see people be able to, go further, faster, and unleash really who they are. And we had a hand in that. We were able to help impact them and spur them on to that end. But then it's them. It's them growing and being who they are, which is exciting. So yeah,
it's easy to talk about later in life because a lot of the things, there were some ups and downs as you were parenting in that. But you can look back and frame that for some of the entrepreneurs you talk to.
Yeah, well, we've never made any parenting mistakes, and so, or I should say, we'll come back in 20 years and have this conversation.
Oh man, loving this conversation with Mark Burwell. Just a wealth of wisdom. It's amazing. We sat, even after our conversation, we sat for probably another hour or two, and I was just drinking up what he had to share. Just so good. Love the work that he's doing too. Everything about it. A few things I want to recap here. Next episode, we'll get to what not to do's. But a few things here. I love what he said about never retiring. Right? Never retire. But that assumes that you wouldn't want to retire, right? And then that assumes that you're doing something that you wouldn't want to retire from, right? So we get right back to what Mark said: do what you love, pick your lifestyle, do what you love, and do it in such a way that you can actually pick your lifestyle. This seems so foreign to us, and I totally get how that phrase "do what you love" gets thrown around a lot in a lot of destructive ways. But in order to love what you do, you kind of have to do what you love, right? I mean, you have to take a look at the 3 fundamental questions. What do you enjoy? What are you good at? And what are your economic opportunities? And where it hits a sweet spot, that's going to be not only something that you love to do, but you will find yourself doing what you love. And in that way, by taking an entrepreneurial path, right, even as an evolutionary entrepreneur, you can begin to design your lifestyle. And sometimes we approach the equation or the dilemma saying, okay, how can I design my life around my work? And that's where we start. But I want to challenge our starting place. Why are we coming at from that angle? Do we have to? Are we in that situation where we don't have another choice? Is this our philosophy on life, where life just fits in somewhere around work, where work is really, really our life? I find it pretty convenient that, that we are told to sleep for 8 hours, work for 8 hours, and then we get 8 hours with, whatever we want to do. Hey, that seems pretty even. That's great. That's a trade-off. Why do we have that framework of life? Why do we think about life in those constructs? Right. And I think this gets at the heart of it is certain narratives that we believe, right? Are we choosing our path in life, or is it being chosen for us? And I think a lot of us, maybe contrary to how we grew up and we understood, how the world should work. We go to, school for 18 years, Monday through Friday, live for the weekends, go to college 4 years, Monday through Friday, live for the weekends. And finally we can get a job Monday through Friday and live for the weekends, right? For the rest of our lives until we retire, right? And then we have this glorious, heaven awaiting for us, in our retirement, the rich, wonderful life that we always wish we could have had when we were younger. And now we're old and we can't really enjoy it, but now we get it. And that's great. I mean, it's kind of funny. But anyway, I want to just plant a few of those seeds in your minds and say hey, are you actually intentionally, proactively designing your life? And did you design it in such a way that you're trying to squeeze in your life around your work? Or are you saying, hey, how can I fit in my work, the way that I produce and give and contribute to society within the lifestyle that I want? And you have to start asking then, what lifestyle is that? What would you want your day to look like, day in, day out? And those are really, really important things. If you haven't already pressed on that path, I encourage you today just to simply ask that question, flip the equation. Don't try to fit life in around work. Ask yourself, what would it look like to fit in work around life? What would an ideal day look like? And how can I fit work into that equation, right? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Part 2 coming out with Mark tomorrow. I look forward to that. If this has been encouraging to you, share this with a friend. Share it with someone that you think would also be encouraged by it, or maybe maybe this would be completely new, out of left field for them, and it could help them. That'd be awesome too. One great way you can do that, helping to get these stories out to the world, is leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to. It seems like a lot of y'all are listening to iTunes, which is great, or Apple Podcasts. That's awesome. But wherever you listen, a review would be really, really helpful. It means a lot to me, but more so than just me, helping the folks that have shared their stories, doing them justice, honoring them, getting their stories out to the world. If you are a entrepreneur and you have success, you've had success, but you've also, assuming to get to that success, you've had failures. Hey, let's connect. And maybe you need to get on the show, or maybe you know someone who's an entrepreneur that has had success, but also failures, and they would be willing and would really enjoy sharing their story. Let's get them on the show, have them reach out to me. If you're a business and you've got an awesome story to tell, maybe you want to help empower entrepreneurs. Maybe the folks that are listening are aspiring entrepreneurs and you think you've got a great solution for them that can really help them down that path. In whatever industry that might be. Hey, let's connect. Let's see how we can tell your story to our community here. Well, it's been said that good men learn from their own mistakes, but great men, they learn from the mistakes of others. So go and be great, and we'll see you next time.